Hello and thank you for joining us for our news bulletin with me, Tandi Wemsamara. Let's take a look at our top stories. Pope Francis urges the faithful to remember the suffering people of Yemen. Security experts fear government's decision to remove roadblocks will fuel crime rate. Jaja obtains court injunction against dismissal as DPP regional governor for the South. And in international news, Zimbabwe president promises free and fair election. We do have the details of these stories and more, to stay with us. Pope Francis has urged the faithful to pray that we will not grow weary in bearing witness to the gospel even in times of tribulation, and that all the saints and holy martyrs be seeds of peace and reconciliation between peoples for a more human and fraternal world, while waiting for the kingdom of heaven to be fully manifested when God will be all in all. Addressing the faithful gathered in St. Peter's Square for his weekly general audience earlier today, the Holy Father continued his catechesis on apostolic zeal and turned to the figure of St. Paul, describing him as a true champion of apostolic zeal. The Pope also spoke of the Church's many martyrs, praying especially for those working in Yemen, dominated by war for so many years. We have more details in this Vatican News report read by Bernard Banza.
In his catechesis, Pope Francis said that Christians in participating in the celebration of the Eucharist were led by the Spirit to set their lives on the basis of that misery of love, which is that the Lord Jesus had given his life for them, and therefore they too could and should give their lives for him and for their brothers and sisters. He explained that Christian martyrs are more numerous in our time than in the first centuries, and recalled that the Second Vatican Council reminds us that martyrdom, by which the disciple is made like his master, who freely accepts death for the sake of the world, and by which he becomes like him in the shedding of blood, is esteemed by the Church as a distinguished gift and a supreme proof of charity. Bringing his catechesis to an end, Pope Francis shed light on the Christian witnesses present all over the world, and in a particular way brings everyone's attention to Yemen, a land that has been wounded for many years by a terrible forgotten war which has caused so many deaths and still causes so many people to suffer, especially children. The Pope continued to say that a shining example of self-giving by those serving Christ in that suffering nation is that of the missionary sisters of charity, who even today they are still present in Yemen, where they offer assistance to the sick elderly and people with disabilities.
Security experts have expressed fear that Malawi is sitting on a ticking bomb of increased crimes following the removal of roadblocks in some roads of the country. Luntha TV's spot check in the capital city of Lilongwe has revealed that rampant crimes like motorists exceeding capacity due to the fact that the roads have been removed. Security expert Master Mfune describes the move by the government as uncalled for. Robert Edward has more details.
I paused as a passenger on this minibus, and this is what I saw. People packed 4 and more on one seat, in exceeding the capacity. They have nothing to fear, of course, on this Raccoon Road and other roads, because the traffic officers were on lunch break and the checkpoint was removed following the minister's directive. Fighting crimes in reverse or recipe for crime increase is what the decision by the Homeland Security Minister Kennedy Sekaringoma has probably landed the country into chaos, as others may describe it. This is Wemba along Likuni Road, where previously police successfully managed to apprehend suspects who were found with a gun, bullets, and other ammunitions because of the roadblock. But now, it's just honeymoon for suspects who may commit crimes. Things are okay now. There is freedom. But previously, we used to go using uncharted routes learning from police. Before coming up with the decision, the minister and the ministry's argument, among others, relied on alleged reports that police officers on the road blocks indulge in alleged corrupt practices, among others. But security expert Master Mfune has a different view.
Those who had an idea of mounting roadblocks, they had a reason why those roadblocks were mounted. Now, the failure of government to control corruption should not create a threat to security.
When our observations were brought before the minister, this was his reaction.
That is a road traffic issue. There's no problem with that. I'm talking of security. Yeah, road traffic issue, we have road traffic officers that will handle that. That's not an issue. Because they are there, they can stop anywhere, not at roadblock. We don't see road traffic officers at the roadblock alone. They are all over. They stop anywhere. So that's not an issue at all.
I am at previously Wemba roadblock along Chinsapo Road, and the structure behind me was a police unit. Now, because the roadblock has been removed, it means this structure has been rendered unusable. This is because the Minister of Homeland Security decided to remove the roadblocks in the country. This is not the only roadblock. Other roadblocks from other roads, including the M1 road, as you're entering or going out of the capital city, have also been removed. But was the decision indeed good? Was there no any other solution to the reason why the decision was made? For Luntha, this is Robert Edward.
Government, through the Ministry of Health, is still calling on the general public to continue practicing good hygiene to help prevent and control further spread of cholera, which began in March last year. According to the spokesperson in the ministry, Adrian Chigumbe, even though vaccine intake has been advocated for, the major prevention method still remains good hygiene practices as they are fully guaranteed. He further stated, as we are living with the epidemic, we must learn and continue to be cautious as we never really know who is infected. Jacqueline Saidi has more details in this report.
All the 29 health districts in the country have reported cholera cases since the confirmation of the first case in March 2022 in Machinga district. The outbreak has been controlled in 7 health districts, and in the last 14 days, the disease has been reported in 22 districts of Luntha, Chikwawa, Nkhotakota, Karonga, Balaga, Mangochi, Lilongwe, Machinga, Mulanje, Salima, Ncheu, Palombe, Dedza, Chiladzulu, Nsanje, Neno, Doa, Zomba, Choro, Nchinji, Nchisi, Kasungu, and Rumpi. According to the Ministry of Health, numbers of the confirmed cases can and will be controlled if hygiene practices are being followed by the public, just like they are advocated and advised. Speaking in an interview with Luntha Television, spokesperson for the ministry, Adrian Chigumbe, said even though people are being asked to get vaccines to help in the outbreak, the major ways in which the epidemic can be completely dealt with is by following proper hygiene practices.
The vaccine provides short-term protection. If you get one dose, you get protected for about a year. If you get both doses, you get protected for only about 5 years, and you need to get another, and so on and so forth. But if we uphold high levels of hygiene and sanitation, that's sustainable, because that would provide us with lifelong protection. So far, for the vaccines that we just received recently, we have 1.4 million doses that we are distributing to the identified areas. Like I said, we only provide cholera vaccine to manage an existing outbreak, so we are only concentrating on specific districts with high burden of cholera.
Since the onset of the outbreak, Lilongwe has reported most of the cases, followed by Blantyre, Mangochi, Balaka, Salima, Machinga, Dedza, Nkatabe, Kotakota, Cheladzulu, Dowa, Ncheu, Choro, Lumpi, Garonga and Mulanje, with 909 cases and 39 deaths. For Luntha Television News, this is Jacqueline Saidi.
The Ministry of Education says it has put in place various precautionary measures in making sure that learners in various schools in the southern region are well protected from the effects of Cyclone Freddy. The ministry spokesperson Patson Konera has told us that among others they have banned the selling of already cooked food in schools and are providing counseling to ease the learners' trauma. More than 490,000 primary and secondary school learners were unable to attend school due to the damage caused by the cyclone. Bridget Manoga has the details.
Cyclone Freddy caused extensive damage to classrooms, feeding shelters, toilets, teachers' houses and head teachers' offices, causing disruption to the education sector. Schools in the southern region remained opened since 27th March 2023 after resumption of classes following Cyclone Freddy induced temporary closure. In an interview, Nkuonera said the ministry is working closely with councils to make sure that the health and safety of the learners is not compromised by fumigating classrooms occupied by internally displaced persons, IDPs. He said to contain the further spread of cholera, they have banned the selling of already cooked food in schools and they are providing chlorine.
As the northern and the central region open for the third term on the 17th of April 2023, joining the southern region schools, which you are aware that they remained open since 27th March 2023 after a resumption of classes following Cyclone Freddy induced temporary closure. The ministry would like to assure learners, parents and guardians that all is in place to make sure that the health and safety of the learners is not compromised by fumigating the classrooms occupied by IPDs, among other measures.
Nkuonera also elaborated that in cases where internally displaced persons are still occupying the classes, they are told to leave in the morning to pave way for teaching and learning to take place. About 230 schools which withstood the cyclone were being used as temporary accommodation for some of the 362,000 people who were displaced. This is Bridget Manoka for Luntha News in Lilongwe.
If you just tuned in to Luntha TV, know that you're watching news coming to you live from Bishop Navy Media Center. But before I proceed, let's have another look at the headlines. Pope Francis urges the faithful to remember the suffering people of Yemen. Security experts fear government's decision to remove roadblocks will fuel crime rate. Jaja obtains court injunction against dismissal as DPP regional governor for the South. And in international news, Zimbabwe president promises free and fair election. Proceeding with the news, Lilongwe High Court has gridlocked the main opposition Democratic Progressive Party DPP and its leader Peter Mutharika from sacking Charles Jaja as the party's regional governor for the southern region. In an order for interlocutory injunction, we have seen High Court Judge Simeon Ndedza has further directed that there should be an inter-party hearing within 28 days. Opposition DPP sacked Mjacha last Friday, replacing him with Thomson Negamangira, saying it wanted to try new faces in the party's top positions. The development came barely a fortnight after the party sacked Joyce Jiko and Kelvin Chirambo as Northern Regional Director of Women and Regional Director of Youth, respectively. The Department of Disaster Management Affairs, DODMA, has called on Mzuzu City residents to relocate to safer places that are not prone to disaster. The call has been made following heavy rains that have resulted in flash flooding and displacing some households in flood-prone areas within the city. According to Mzuzu City Council Disaster Desk Officer Precious Mandala, it is high time that people needed to adhere to such calls due to the continued natural disasters that are leaving thousands of people destitute. Bernard Mwanza with the details.
Barely a week after floods displaced some households in the area of Traditional Authority Marueni in Rumpi district, the natural disaster has now hit the Mzuzu city following persistent rainfall the city and surrounding areas have been receiving since last Saturday, displacing over 500 households. It is reported that most houses have completely collapsed. Others developed cracks and some houses submerged in water in areas such as Shuavi, Lupaso, Nkolongo, Jombo, Msongwe, Katawa and Masasa, with fears that more houses would be affected as the rains persist. Precious Mandala, who is Mzuzu City Council Disaster Desk Officer, said currently assessments are still underway to determine the damage as rains are still falling. Mandala has told Luntha television earlier today that so far, government through DODMA is assisting the affected households with food and non-food items. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Water and Sanitation through the Department of Water Resources has warned of possible flash floods in some rivers in the northern and central region, including lakeshore areas. A public notice signed by the ministry's principal secretary, Elias Mlambe, says the warning comes as per weather forecast by the Department of Climate Change and Meteorological Services. According to Chimlambe, rivers in Duangwa, South Rukuru, North Rumpi, Nkotakota and Karonga Lakeshore catchments, among others, are expected to continue experiencing high water levels up to Thursday, the 20th of April 2023, due to heavy rainfall in the Lakeshore districts. Malawi is yet to heal from the devastating tropical cyclone Freddy that has displaced thousands of households and killing over 600 people. For Luntha News in Lilongwe, I am Bernard Mwanza.
An agriculture policy analyst, Tamani Nkonomvula, has tipped government to engage companies with expertise in irrigation farming to work together in producing various crops so as to avert the looming hunger. In an interview with Luntha TV, Tamani Nkonomvula said if authorities continue with what appears to be a casual approach in managing aftermaths of crisis, Malawi is likely to experience one of the worst food shortages. According to Mvula, it is possible to remedy the situation by, among other things, encouraging farmers to do winter cropping as well as engage companies that have vast experience in irrigation farming to assist government in producing food crops. Charity Chilanga has more details in this report.
This year, Malawi is feared to experience the worst food shortages following poor implementation of Affordable Inputs Program, the washing away of crops due to Cyclone Freddy with the combined effects of drought in some parts of the northern region. In an interview with Luntha Television, an agriculture expert, Tamani Nkonomvula, said many people risk facing hunger unless authorities intervene. According to Mvula, this is the right time the country ventures into small-scale irrigation because the soil where there were floods is still moist and rivers will take time to dry up. He said that the country should embark on a serious winter cropping, and if the private sector is not willing, government should come in and take up, because if not for that, Malawians will suffer.
The thing that needs to happen is to ensure that we have quantified the level of loss that we should be expecting. The progress that have been established so far, they are showing us still an indication of a surplus. But we need to ensure that we have quantified the level of loss, and because that is what is going to help us now to plan properly in terms of the level of investment that will have to be done to cover up for the loss that we will be experiencing as a result of the challenges that we have had. But what we need to do is to ensure that farmers have been encouraged to go for a winter crop. Once they have harvested in those areas where there is still some moisture. We encourage farmers to do a winter crop. But also, in addition to that, we need to have small-scale irrigation promoted.
The Malawi Vulnerability Assessment (MVRC) estimated that about 3.5 million people were expected to face hunger. But this was prior to Cyclone Freddy, which washed away farmland in the 10 districts of the southern region. Charity Chilanga, Luntha Television, Lilongwe.
Now, in international news, Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has vowed that general elections expected later this year will be free and fair. The Southern African country is due to hold presidential and legislative votes expected to be in August, but no date has been announced yet. The 80-year-old leader, who is seeking re-election, during an Independence Day speech on Tuesday, urged Zimbabweans to say no to violence before, during, and after the upcoming crunch vote. We have more details on this African news report read by Jacqueline Saidi.
In a speech delivered at an event to mark 43 years of independence from Britain, Mnangagwa said his government has put measures in place to ensure free, fair and credible elections. He also warned of voices, foreign or local, inclusive of rogue NGOs, sowing seeds of division and disharmony amongst people in the country. Mnangagwa's ZANU-FP party has been accused in the past of using violence and intimidation to instill fear in opponents during elections. 2 days after the 2018 polls, soldiers killed 5 people when opposition protesters alleging fraud took to the streets of Harare, burning tires and pulling down street signs. In early February, the country's parliament approved a bill banning civil society organizations from engaging in politics. Under the new legislature, the state can intervene in the governance and activities of charities and civil groups, including making changes to their internal management and funding. The law, which caused outcry from rights groups and the global community, states that violators would risk up to a year in jail. In 2018, Mnangagwa won disputed elections that his main rival Nelson Chamisa insists were rigged. The two will face off for a second time in the upcoming polls.
That African news read by Jacqueline Saidi also brings to the end of what we had for you in this edition of our news bulletin. But before we leave, a reminder of our top stories. Pope Francis urges the faithful to remember the suffering people of Yemen. Security experts fear government's decision to remove roadblocks will fuel crime rate. Jaja obtains court injunction against dismissal as DPP regional governor for the South. And in international news, Zimbabwe president promises free and fair election. You're with me, Tandi Wemzumara. Thank you so much for keeping me company, and do continue following the rest of our programs right here on Luntha TV. Goodbye for now, and do stay safe.